What we're looking at here is a fresh install of the Redux boilerplate. We cloned it from GitHub. This is what it looks like if you're in the root directory of our boilerplate. We have a web app directory which contains the web app, and in the root directory we're adding support for Docker if that's something you're using for maybe microservices. We do microservices and monolith projects, so we like to support both. If you're not doing that, it's no big deal. You can just jump into the web app directory and then run a npm start, and this would assume that you've already installed the dependencies via npm install, which I'm sure most people are familiar with. What was happening there is Prettier is running before the app builds, and we go ahead and make the files consistent with ESLint roles, and we've started with Create React App as our starting point, but I feel we've improved it a little bit, at least for our liking, because the way we set up Prettier is that without setting anything up on your box, you can come in, change a file, so we take these and mess up the format, and if you save when the build's running, it will fix it for you right away. And so that's a nice feature because you don't have to worry about developers going in and configuring some hook or doing whatever, and we find that that helps with PRs where all the code is super consistent. And so back to the main topic, what we're going to look at here is adding a new feature to this web app. And the way we go about doing that is we like using Blueprint templates in Visual Studio Code. So to do this approach where the code generated for you, you have to use Visual Studio Code, which is a free IDE. It's a great one by Microsoft. And then you need to install the Blueprint plugin. But once you have those installed, we have this Vice React Hooks template available for you. And the way Blueprint works is if you have things in subfolders of this Blueprint template folder, they'll be available for you on the right nav. So you can feel free, if you use this boilerplate, to modify the template to your liking. But for us, what we're going to do is we're going to add a new feature. We'll just call it demo. And so we have this new file from template available to us from Blueprint, and we can come in, we can say we want to add a new Vice React Hooks module, and we'll call it demo, and then that's going to generate some code for us. And this generates what we have been calling our feature module. We're using the Node.js concept of a module, which is a folder that has an index file which defines what's going to be exported from it, with the concept of having an app feature. So by right-clicking, we've created all the code required for a basic feature, which I'll show you how we can take a look at that now. The first thing we need to do is add our feature to the root reducer. We'll go ahead and just copy one of the existing lines from our features. We'll change it from user context to demo. What this is doing is saying from the demo, which is this index file here, I want to grab star, which is everything, which is all the name constants. So we'll get name, update filter, reducer, fetch all demo, etc. As the variable demo. And we want to put that on our root reducer so that demo name is the name of our slice, and demo reducer is the actual reducer that will manage doing this immutable state mutations for us, which that's probably not the right way to say that, but you know what I mean. So then now we have our data flow wired up. We can go and make our route so that we can hit it. Come over here, we'll add the demo module here, and we say we want to get demo out of the demo module. If we click that, see, it takes us to this demo file here, which is located in our feature module. And that's because that's exposed as our default export. And by convention, we are recommending that you just expose the component that is most likely to be imported as your default export. There's a lot of different things you could do there. We like that because we figure if you're outside of a module, you're most likely, the thing that you would import the most times would probably be some main component. we've seen other people do it where it's the reducer that gets the default export, and I mean, you could change it to be whatever you want, but we like doing the default component. We'll go ahead and create a new page route for our demo feature that's being exported. And the page route is just a wrapper around the React router, which puts some styling on it for our default page. So if I go ahead and save all this now, our feature should be wired up. So we should be able to come over, and if it's already loaded up, but if I go ahead and refresh the browser when I'm on the demo route here, you'll see that we get a busy spinner, we get some data come back, and we get a status that tells us that demo is loaded. And we can come in and put a 1 to filter there, or a 2 to filter there. We could say DU, and it's not going to change anything. And as you can see, it's all wired up to Redux here, including when we fetched our data. We've got busy incremented. We've got our busy notification popping up. So that's a pretty decent amount of feature, and it gives us a full round trip. This is actually right here, the data coming back is an example of asynchronous processing or an asynchronous action, while the filtering, which is down here, is going to be synchronous. So we're doing both types of data flows. So let's take a quick look at the code that was created for us and how all that's fitting together there. So we're exposing the reducer and name, as we saw, off of reducer here. So what does that exactly do? If we go look at our slice here, we're using Redux Toolkit's create slice. This allows reducing boilerplate quite a bit, because if you use create slice, we tell it what the name of that slice is going to be, what the initial state. Here we're going to have all demo and filter. And then we add to it reducers, and so we have our synchronous reducers up here, or I guess I should say synchronous actions, because it's actually a combination of an action and a reducer. So for the update filter that we saw when we do this, that right there is all created with just this one little function. So that creates the action type for us, that creates the action creator. And then if you notice here, we're able to just mutate state. We're not having to do the immutable update patterns that, if you know idiomatic Redux. So we can actually just directly modify state. And this is because the Redux toolkit supports Immer, which is a library that allows you to modify state. And then it will take that state modification that you did, compare it with the original state, and do the proper immutable updates for you. So it saves you a ton of coding, and just also lightens your mental load a little bit, not having to think about spreading everything out all the time. Then we're also doing an asynchronous call to get data, and the way that that works there is that we're pulling in an asynchronous action from our demo async actions file here. We like to put these action creators in a separate file because there can be a large number of those over time. And what you do is you use the create async thunk out of Redux toolkit to create an asynchronous thunk, which is basically just a action that can be dispatched and that will implement the asynchronous pattern for you, where you're going to send a notification before the call goes out to say, hey, I'm requesting some data, or that request is pending. And then once the request is done, it'll tell you it's fulfilled. And if there's an error, it will tell you what that error is. So you get all of that out the box with create async thunk. And then what we add to it is this do async piece here. Do async will allow you to specify whether you want to use caching or not, whether you want to have a busy spinner, which are all features that I had demoed in a previous video. And then other things that you can do is you can tell it what the success message is, which is why we saw demo loaded when after our data loads here. See demo loaded, that's the message coming out of there. And if we get an error, it'll give you this message popped up there. And you can see that we're pulling this out of dummy data here. We're just able to stub that in and it gives us the delay. Now, if we did want to make this live data, we could come in and just get rid of this. And let's go ahead and try and redo what's being done over here in users. So we'll just grab the URL that that's calling, which is going to go to GitHub. I'm going to put that here. And then if we save, we should see that now the pending went out and our fulfilled came back. And you can see that all demo is now contains a number of login profiles. If you look at raw, you'll be able to see it better. But we're getting an error, and that's because we went from having a string to having an object. So let's just change it so that our our demo here is going to, instead of writing out an item, let's just make it write out a user. So we'll change that to user, where a user would have an ID and a user would have a login. So now if we save that, come back over here, reload our page, see we get back the users from GitHub now. So that's pretty quick to be able to get a feature wired up. And we should be able to come in here and, well, I got a little ambitious there. I think this is because our guy is still assuming it's that item is a string. But if we did log in here, we should be able to have our filtering working now. Well, got an opportunity to demonstrate the error message there. Okay, so it turns out that the issue was that I had hit the limit for a request that the GitHub API has, is 60 per hour. If we go back over to the web page now and refresh, pulls back from GitHub, and we can come in and now we can filter based on the results that are pulling back. And so as you can see, we're able to fairly quickly, using the templates and the standard interface and feature module pattern and all these kind of things, get a feature wired up, calling a live server, filtering a list of results coming back.